colleagues who are on their way to the room. We'll start this afternoon with something that seems to have become a habit with the forum in Timișoara, launching a study. Last year, we launched the unfinished business on the Balkans. This year, we are launching another paper that was written by one of our colleagues, Mr. Horia Ciurtin, on my right-hand side, who is an expert with the NSC. We also are very grateful for Sir James Everard, who is with us, to share some views on this product. We are under the time pressure, as usual, no surprise here. So I will turn directly to the author. Mr. Ciurtin is a lawyer by trade, with a competence, expertise in geoeconomics and strategic analysis, besides his regular work in arbitration and international investment. So a money man and an analytical man. That's not a very usual combination, but it is a most efficient one in this case. The paper that you have in your bags is about a very exciting part of the world, which is our part. And it is about Turkey and Russia. Just two things. One, you remember that both Turkey and Russia veered towards another kind of regime, that is an authoritarian regime, by the beginning of this century. A very weird coincidence in time. The second point is that both somehow fill in the pattern of the make ... great again. Make Russia great again, make Turkey great again, with differences between them, no doubt about that. But enough of me, it's not me who wrote the paper, it was Mr. Ciurtin who did it. So we'll listen to an outline he's going to make for us of this paper. You have the floor.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, I'm glad to be here to present our latest publication at New Strategy Center. And while doing research for it, or rather continuing it where I left it a couple of years ago when I wrote a similar study, an overarching thesis kept crawling up. It seems that not only for now, but for the past 3 centuries, interactions between Turkey and Russia always seem to be more than a bilateral issue. They generally tend to become a crucible for larger movements with regional and global implication, which puts us in front of a lasting reality in strategic terms. When both Russia and Turkey are present in any given theater, it shall become sooner or later the entire world's problem. And that is why the present state of relations between the two deserves a close analysis. This is what I try to do and to follow in this present study, working around the manner in which the two regional powers clash, cohabitate, dominate each other, and usually get stuck in numerous stalemates all across the map. In the beginning, I will present the general framework of analysis applicable to a multitude of contested regions, tracing how Moscow and Ankara find themselves on opposite sides of numerous conflicts, but nonetheless manage to refrain from ruining their bilateral ties. Further on, I will concentrate upon the Balkans, showing how the two actors run their great game around this region. In a nutshell, I show that Russia and Turkey have managed to avoid escalation by functionally insulating the multiple levels of interaction. What happened in Syria, Libya, or Nagorno-Karabakh stayed there and did not spill over. A prized asset for both, direct bilateral ties have been carefully kept aside from day-to-day tensions that occur in every active theater. As the story went, it was a close cooperation over the Black Sea between the two of them, but a general adversity across the larger map. From Libya to Nagorno-Karabakh, from Syria to Ukraine, from Bosnia to Central Asia, everywhere where you look over the map, the two actors support different contenders and strive for completely distinct outcomes. But they do not allow episodic crises to spiral out of control. This pragmatic arrangement between the two transformed into a mechanism of how I like to call it, mutual assured disengagement. Once frictions reach a certain intensity, high-level political dialogue is used to block further escalation. On certain fronts, such as Syria, for example, this mechanism allows for tactical ceasefires and partition of territorial control, while on other fronts, such as Libya or Nagorno-Karabakh, it provides a no-hard-feelings agreement to disagree. With time, one thing became evident in all the theaters. The simultaneous engagement of Ankara and Moscow on a certain front leads to an unexpected result. That is the ossification of inner borders, a malignant stabilization of partition. Given the two powers' reluctance to challenge each other, they tend to generate frozen conflicts. And they are splitting entities around the tactical ceasefire lines until one of them chooses to partially disengage, if they ever do. That was not the case very often. Now let us get a little bit closer to our topic here today, that is the Balkans, which I gave a privileged position in my study. Unlike the other theaters of contention, the Balkans present an entirely different set of features. In this particular area, Turkey and Russia are not systemic actors capable to exercise a decisive influence in the overall structure, but they are rather focus players or episodic spoilers in a game dominated economically by the EU and China. Despite intense overtures from the two historical patrons, none of the Western Balkan countries aligned its economy or political options with either Turkey or Russia. For all the six entities, the primary objective remains joining the European Union and more increasingly improve economic ties with China. Nonetheless, what Moscow and Ankara also had to offer was sufficiently attractive to keep them involved as active players. Very relevant in the larger blueprint of the region, but not directly decisive or capable to upend the equilibrium. Therefore, both actors rather concentrated their efforts upon smaller areas and subdivisions of the state in question, acting in a very mercantile manner and focusing on pre-existing cultural ties. In this sense, the buildup of Russian and Turkish political capital within the region reflects a very well-crafted strategy for playing above their financial weight, and their capacity to maintain such a volatile position, actually resting on economic feet of clay, largely depends on the willingness of the major players to tolerate being challenged. Navigating the deep Balkan waters is manageable for Russia and Turkey in times of peace, when such political waves are still, but it remains to be seen what happens in case of conflict. So, as we have seen, by and large, the de-escalation mechanism seems to work. Sometimes better, sometimes grudgingly, but nonetheless, it functions. However, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia represents a structural game changer, altering the foundation for the rules of disengagement. A certain geopolitical Rubicon had been crossed, and it has systemic implications for the entire security infrastructure. And while Turkey seems at the moment intent on playing the good and neutral cop in respect to Russia, not taking sides, all the actors will prove far from satisfied by Ankara's equidistance. And whatever path it shall tread upon further, one thing appears certain: squaring the circle is no longer an option for Turkey. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much indeed. I will turn now to Sir James, which you know very much and very well, so I am not going to introduce him once again. Sir James, if you were to highlight the value added of this paper, taking into account that a lot has been written on Russia-Turkish relationship, what would you say?
Well, let me say that, first of all, I was very honoured to write a very short foreword to this excellent study. I mean, I genuinely believe that it's an important volume of work, of research, and Horia takes the reader on a journey of rich discovery. And it's important, and let me explain why. I think despite a fascination with Russia and with Turkey. I don't think we understand the Russian and Turkish mind and soul as well as we need to. I think we are wary of their ambitions and their activism and their focus as guardians, that's my word, I think Horia uses the word patrons, of respectively Slavic and Muslim entities. And I think we worry about their influence in areas like the Western Balkans, in the Caucasus, and in Central Asia. And very few people understand the rules of the game when it comes to Turkey and Russia. And I think this lack of understanding is dangerous. I think it's unsurprising given the complexities that Horia sets out so well in the paper. And of course it appears so illogical to people that Turkey and Russia can compete and cooperate simultaneously. But the paper explains that they have found a way to compartmentalize, the issues that they deal with, often, very stark geopolitically. And of course, they have learnt to preserve that grand strategic prize of cooperation and economic advantage. And I think we have much to learn. I think this paper helps us. And I think we need to learn because, as Horia said, I think the war in Ukraine may stretch Russian and Turkish relations to its limits, perhaps even beyond their limits. I think Turkey finds itself between a rock and a hard place, given its membership of NATO, a reluctance to see Russia become the dominant power in the Black Sea. That could directly threaten Turkish interests. And so I think interdependence is going to be increasingly problematic. And of course, I think we in NATO believe that Turkey can have a positive impact, a positive influence in diplomacy with Russia. So I really enjoyed this paper. I think it covers all the issues and more. I said to Horia already, I think it needs to be updated in 2023. But I know he will sign your copy to add eBay value if you need it. But I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. If I may stick with you, Sir James, Horia's sort of final conclusion is that Turkey's attempt to square the circle of its relationship is doomed to fail unless there is at least some success in her mediating efforts with Russia. Now, we know there have been some other plans and attempts to interfere and put an end to the war rather sooner than later. Do you think that there might be, would Turkey contribute to a sort of critical mass for pressing Russia along these lines of coming and giving it up?
I mean, first of all, I thought the comments made by President Macron and Olaf Scholz yesterday were very interesting, that they are not going to force Ukraine to negotiate any form of conditions that Ukraine are not happy with. And actually, for me, I see Turkey's ambition was initially perhaps to act as a broker, but now realizes that perhaps it can just help with shipping and food. And so I think they're pitching their ambition at a reasonable level. But I mean, Horia might want to comment because he knows it better than me.
Well, comment on that, short.
Is it working? Well, I think it's difficult at this moment to see where the mediating efforts will lead. They want a big place at the table, at the mediating table. They don't want to mediate smaller parts. They would like to have a peace conference in Ankara, to have Erdogan patronate. But I don't think the war is going that way. And I don't think Turkey has the weight or the leverage on both actors to make it happen.
All right, thank you. Well, that's a fascinating topic indeed. If I may come back to you, Horia, Sir James mentioned the success of both Russia and Turkey in compartmentalizing their relationship. Now, compartmentalizing, that's a funny word, is a line that Turkey has been promoting very consistently. Yet you say at one moment in your book that, and I quote, Turkey rarely limited its stance to pragmatic, issue-by-issue approaching international relations, unquote. Now, is there a possibility that Turkey applies this compartmentalization method selectively? For instance, Israel. They do something for gas mainly, but don't do something else on other matters.
Well, I think that, yes, Turkey tends to insulate some problems with Russia, but it has a general blueprint. Even since Davutoglu was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, they have a grand idea behind their stance over the map. And I think, yes, maybe with Israel they could do a tit for tat, but they also have to answer to their own constituency, which is troubled by Turkey having too close ties to Israel. And it's more difficult right now because they invested so much in their patronage of the entire Islamic world and the new champion of Islam, and playing with Israel would not fit very well that narrative. But they could minimize it in front of their public and do it anyway for some gains.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much indeed. I remember, I think we were talking about zero problems with neighbors, right? And now there seems to be zero neighbors without problems.
Zero neighbors.
Which is quite a problem. Now, again, with you, Horia, you mentioned in your book, in your paper at one moment, that Russia is rather a spoiler in terms of foreign investments in Turkey. Fine. What about Turkey's attempt to attract other investors? And of course, since it is located where it is, one automatically thinks about China's Belt and Road Initiative. So how would Turkey manage to balance the Chinese/Russian interests?
Well, I think there is a pattern for Turkey to take on if they want to do it. You see Central Asia, which is traditionally Russian sphere of influence, but China is very present there, and Russia learned to live with it, because Russia cannot squeeze China out of anywhere, and they need China. But at the same time, I think Turkey will become even more and more important for the Belt and Road Initiative, because now, given that the route through Russia and Ukraine will be very difficult, the land route, I mean, will be very difficult for Chinese to pursue more intensely, the only land route that can come to Europe is through Turkey. But we have seen overtures from Erdogan to China, for instance, to help him fund the Canal Istanbul, which he plans to make a landmark achievement. But the Chinese have not really jumped in on the project because it's a vanity project in many senses.
All right, thank you very much. Now, I'm afraid we are coming not very far from the end of this presentation. So, Sir James, to wrap it up, it looks like you mentioned actually the presence and actions of Russia in the Black Sea. Apparently, the Black Sea is going to turn into a Russian lake. In old history, it used to be a Turkish lake. NATO has some allies on the shores, but Russia is perhaps going to lay her hands on the southern border of Ukraine, on the southern shores. So it will be there. What is NATO going to do, or could NATO do about that, particularly now with this very, very complicated matter of Sweden and Finland wanting to join the alliance and Turkey being reluctant, so to speak? That's a misnomer, of course.
Well, I think, I mean, first of all, one has to congratulate the New Strategy Centre because, you know, even years ago when we were very focused as an alliance on the Baltic, we were constantly saying that the Black Sea region is the region where, you know, we are going to see the competition really coming alive. And that's truer now than it's ever been. I don't think it's a Russian lake. I think they might want it to become a Russian lake. But preserving a balance in that area relies on NATO, and NATO relies on Turkey. And so I think establishing good relations with Turkey and developing the plans that the Supreme Allied Command has already developed is an important next step. And I personally believe that, you know, Sweden and Finland, of course, will join the alliance. Do I think this will drag on to the other side of the summit? I don't know. It may well do that. But in the end, they will join, and I think they are worthy and good additions to the alliance and will add significant value.
All right, thank you. I'm afraid that's it. I'd like to invite our audience, not in the room, but the internet audience, to read this paper. Go to the website of the New Strategy Center. It's newstrategycenter.ro, and click on Studies. Forget about the pop-down menu. Just click on Studies and you'll find it, and you'll enjoy it, I assure you. Thank you very much indeed. Have a great afternoon. And without any break, I'm afraid, we'll go on to the next panel, and the panelists and the moderator are kindly invited to take their places. Thank you.
Well, it looks like we step straight in to the next panel. I'd like to start by congratulating Mr. Scutaru and the New Strategy team, New Strategic Center team, Professor Pirtea, Director of West University, and the team for putting this fabulous conference together again. It's the sixth edition. It's already a tradition for the West University of Timișoara and the New Strategy Center. As we can see, it is not only very relevant every year, but it's more and more becoming necessary. We need to meet in this forum, and we need to discuss issues because things change so fast that we really need to be keeping pace with the changes in the world. Whoever have thought last year when we departed from this conference that we would be this year in this conference within such a setting in our neighborhood. And I think the more we prepare, the better we are to build a resilient society, and I'll return to this word. I'll start by making reference to what Professor Pirtea said at the beginning, quoting Nelson Mandela, that education is the strongest weapon that can change the world. And if the first panel was made of key actors in the politics of the security architecture of the Western world, the second panel was made of key generals and military representatives of the architecture of the security of the Western world. I think it is our great honor and privilege, and my great honor and privilege, and I'm thankful to the organizer for giving me the floor for this panel, to introduce the other side of the army, the educational side of the army. It's the army that deals with minds and people, and I think we are becoming more and more relevant, and more people become aware that defense, building security structures, building a security infrastructure, a resilient society, has to have as allies the civil society, particularly the academia, particularly those people who are dealing with knowledge, because we know knowledge is power, but we also know that knowledge is the most important element that becomes the first prime material that is being dealt with today in our world. The more knowledge we have, the better we are, the deeper knowledge we have, the stronger we are. And this applies tremendously to the building of a secured, resilient, democratic world. We are needed much more than ever as academics, and we are important at the West University of Timișoara for many years now already. I can say there are a very good number of us, at least 6, but more than that. We are strong believers in the contribution of the academia to building such a resilient society, to contributing to building resilient societies, democratic Western world. And we believe that we must have 3 elements, at least 3 elements at hand and in our minds when we approach this. We must be people who develop understanding of what is at stake in our world from this perspective. We must go as deep as possible and as far as possible to understanding the world in which we live. We need to produce knowledge. We need to produce the right knowledge that is also useful to the decision makers, that is also useful for our students, for our people, for the people around us. But we also need to promote such knowledge and to facilitate discussions around this kind of knowledge. And this is what we are doing right now, facilitating such a gathering. And I'm very honored to have around me a number of educators, leaders in education, representatives of various aspects of the educational world. And it is a very distinguished panel of speakers. And I would just like to turn now to our first speaker in our panel, and it is Mr. Mario Lina Barata Raposo. I think you are online, Professor Raposo. He's a full professor in the Department of Management and Economics at the Universidade de Beira Interior in Portugal, a researcher for the Center for Research in Business Sciences. He has developed his entire academic and professional career at UBI, participating in various governing teams and as chairman of the Department of Management and Economics. Professor Raposo, it is our great pleasure to give the floor to you.
First of all, good afternoon to all of you from Portugal. I hope that all things will fine. And also I wish to present my greetings to Director Marilyn Pierta, to the moderator of this panel, and to all colleagues that are in this panel. I have sent my PowerPoint. I hope that you could pass the PowerPoint, because I centered my presentation in 4 main points. First point, I wish to speak about the context, because the panel is building resilience through education, and this situation related with the Balkans. I don't know if it's possible to put my PowerPoint there.
It seems that we are not prepared. I'm being given a sign from the technical desk that, I don't know, you don't have it here, or?
No, I sent.
You sent it.
The Secretariat have told me to send the PowerPoint, and they passed the PowerPoint when I'm speaking. They told me to do this, okay?
The technical table?
Okay, but I'm speaking, okay, no problems. So I think in the context, we are in the area of Balkans. In the last panels, we speak about questions about security and so on. But of course, in Balkans, they have a problem with the multifactorial dimension related with the question political, economic, religious, educational, and other challenges. And of course, the big challenges lies in the question of integration in the European Union, like Serbia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Albania. But of course, this adhesion is adhesion without no close deadlines, and the process is very longer and take more than a decade. Another challenge is about the border control. The Balkans is one of the most used routes for illegal immigration that creates strong instability on the borders, mainly in Romania and Bulgaria. And of course, now the hands of the war are not fully healed, and the strong tensions between Serbia and Kosovo, and now, of course, the war in Ukraine makes problems and some concernings to everybody. Also in Bosnia, the country is heavily affected by religious, ethnic, political tensions and being an explosive melting pot. So, what the ways to contribute to resolve the situation? I think that we need to have my presentation or... Sorry?
It looks like they are working on it. I can see them in 2 minutes.
Okay, so I wait.
I apologize for that. for this
Okay,
hiccup.
I will try to. I try to make some, to share from here, but I think it's impossible, right?
May I suggest that we do a swap of speakers, if that is not a problem for you, Professor Raposo, to wait?
Yeah,
and
okay, change.
We have
change.
the other speaker, and by this time, perhaps
Okay,
have
okay,
the...
okay. Good.
Is that okay with the technical team there?
Yes.
By some time? It works now, or it's okay? We move to the next speaker, yeah?
Okay.
No, it
Okay,
works. No,
change.
it works. It works. They're
Good,
saying
okay.
that we are getting close to.
Please. Okay, so you know the resilience is a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, a trauma, tragedy, threats, or even a significant source of stress. So we need that the people are more resilient, and this resilience can be trained inside the institutions. So it's very important that these involved behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and by anyone to correct the strategies. And also, you can pass the next slide, is a metaphor where you can see that the strength does not came from what we can do. It came from overcoming the things you once you couldn't. So we have to make training to the people that make things that appear that impossible to do. Our responsibility in education, it's make our education in our students to try to develop competencies to overcome the things that they think they cannot do. This is training resilience, and of course, please, and another, because the people that are resilient, I want to, next slide, please. The people that are resilient are up more to use the abilities that they have to face some challenge problems, and they have, of course, implication with teamwork and leadership. Courage, the people that are leadership are different. So we are a group, and somebody is different. This is leadership, and it's important that we can develop leadership between somebody that takes the courage and assume decisions important to develop and to dominate fear, not the absence of the fear, okay? The people must control and develop his capacity to control the fear and assume the leadership. That's why I try to show with this metaphor where one of the little fish assumed leadership, he tried to move to other area alone, and it's different from the other group. This is characteristics that we have to develop in our students to improve the resilience, and this, of course, to gain values to confront the challenges of the society. Please, can change. Of course, that when we work with resilience, we can show resilience as an iceberg. You know that an iceberg, you just see what is above the line of the water. But what is below the line of the water is very important, the input that the people have. So we have to work with the attitudes, the values, the knowledge, the characteristics that each one have, because if you have a good education, a good training, you can have a good performance and have above the line, the application of the expertise and the technical knowledge appears and make the difference when you go to the society, do different things. So, next slide, please. So we need, of course, that when we have an input in the soft skills, we want that the knowledge and the ability change and create hard skills that are very important to create the creativity, to create entrepreneurial spirit, and so on, that make the leader and make this leadership very important to go to society and make the difference when the students finish the course and go, of course, to the market. And the next slide, you see this kind of interconnection between ability, knowledge, and attitudes, you create competence. And the competence that the people must have is a grouping of correlated knowledge, skills, attitudes, which affects a considerable part of the activity of individuals, which is related to their performance, which can be measured according to pre-established standards and can be improved through education and training. So the education and training must be used to improve the competence that each one have, and if you work for that, you can improve better the people and, of course, the resilience. An example that I show you in next slide is what we do in our Faculty of Medicine. This is an example of our lab of clinical skills, where we pose the students with some problems. One problem is, for instance, imagine sometimes we create a group of students, 4 or 5 students, and we tell them, okay, someone appears here with a surgery problem. You need, and someone sick need an urgent surgery to the heart. How to do the problem? How to solve the problem? The team with 4 or 5 students, one of them, we nominate them as the main responsible, the others are the group, and they have to train between them the ways to solve the problem of the surgery. So this train the leadership, because the students that are the leader have to assume the main responsibility, and the others have to contribute with the teamwork to solve the problems of the sick people that appears in the lab. So with this training, this advanced simulation, we train what individual skills, teamwork training, with leadership, stress management training, communication training, and initiative, empathy, and motivation. Together, these contribute to create more resilience in students. So this is a way how we can, inside our courses with training and learning, improve resilience in students. And this is a practical way how we do this in the lab, in the Faculty of Medicine, to create resilience in our future doctors. And this, of course, can be translated for all other learnings. So what we can do for the future with the collaboration between institutions, with the universities of the Balkans countries. Please, next slide. Of course, we think that we can do this and improve some ways to make the difference. For instance, because I think that inside the European Union, we need to reinforce the budget for this cooperation university with these Balkan countries, for we can change experience and try to help to develop resilience. Some support, strong support on double degree formations, because if we have double degree formations in our countries, different countries, we can make learning and formation in our students with the same knowledge, and improve the resilience of the students. Develop action to train members of political, social, and economic organizations in the region. So this is the link of our institutions and the region that we have, and we have, of course, inside and a region, and we have a responsibility to make some changes in the region and collaboration, and we have to do this. Also to study the main challenges in the region, to present some solutions about problems, political, territorial, economic, military, and cultural. Some research lines that must be shared between European universities and also with the Balkan stakeholders, and a plan to prevent the brain drain and retain talent. I think that you have a problem in the country because some brain goes away, and we must retain, and we must have a plan to prevent and retain the best brains to help to develop better the countries, and also something to support education training for a democracy, a key area that is now in the next in the Horizon Europe program that now is put in action inside the European Union. So to finish, I have to say that the education, next slide, please, is to make the impossible to make possible. So the education should not be restricted to accommodation or adaptation to the social reality of each one, but act to transform agent of this reality. In this sense, learning should not be facilitative but transformative. And I finish with this picture where we try to make the impossible possible, and with resilience, with the cooperation, and of course with this link between all the institutions, and to translating from one country to other countries to help develop and create a real European citizen between everybody. So thank you very much for hearing me, and I think that I am in the 10 minutes that you give me, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Barata Raposo, for an excellent, in a sense, introduction to exactly what we are trying to achieve here, and a good reminder that the universities have this extremely important role of becoming agents of change, not only places of knowledge. And thank you for reminding us and telling us again that strength means overcoming what we think we cannot overcome. And I think this is important in building our resilient societies in these times of extreme pressures. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Professor Florin Dragan, Director of the Polytechnical School, Polytechnic University of Timișoara, from our city here. Professor Dragan is a specialist in automation, and he temporarily runs, at this moment runs the Polytechnical School in Timișoara. I think it is crucial to add the technical dimension to this discussion here, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear ladies, dear gentlemen, dear colleagues. For the beginning, it will be a little interesting for me to make this presentation because I used to be near the display, not so long distance for me, but maybe after this I will decide if I need distance glasses or not. When we put together resilience and education or university, maybe it's a strange association for the beginning, because of course through education we could increase the resilience, but in fact educational systems are more conservative than other systems. I choose the theme for today to discuss about the resilience and to increase the resilience through European universities, because I'm sure you know, in first two calls in Romania we have 10 universities involved in European universities. From Timișoara there are two, of course, Polytechnic University and West Universities, in two strong alliance of universities and with very interesting influence regarding our universities, our educational environment. Okay, next please. I know the numbers because it's very difficult to see them. So I prepared some statistics regarding the situation, regarding the number of universities in the Balkan region. I didn't put Greece and Turkey because a different situation. We have there Romania. I have put Hungary because here in Timișoara we have maybe stronger or closer cooperation with a lot of universities from Hungary. For example, Polytechnica University has a graduate who is rector at the university from Budapest. So it's very interesting, these kind of relations. There are other countries from Balkans, in fact, almost all of countries, but with the same history, with the communist regime for over 40 years, and with the same, I don't know, Balkan history. You could see on the first column, there are the number of universities, public universities in each country. On the second column, maybe this is not so remarkable. There are private universities in each country. You could see the difference between the countries. The number of population in each country, and I related the number of population with the number of universities. Of course, it's not maybe the good example, because we have to relate the number of population with the number of students, but maybe this is not so different. But we could see the number of universities, they are very different. And we have at the limits Bulgaria with 46 universities, public universities, with a report around 150,000 population at each university. And at the other limit, Serbia, you know the situation, with 10 public universities, with a number of, I remember, around 700,000 population for each university. This means, in my opinion, Romania and Hungary are in the middle with between 300,000 and 400,000, and in that situation is Bosnia too. Serbia is a single country with such a huge rate of population to a university. So this means that in Serbia we have bigger universities than in the Balkans, in other parts of Balkans, and this could make universities from Serbia, from my point of view, more prepared to big changes because the decision is unified. Another situation I didn't put in a slide, but maybe you know, is regarding the growth of the population in this part of the world, in this part of the Europe. In fact, Hungary 10 years ago had the longest negative growth of the population from 1982 from Europe, but 10 years ago they took a lot of measures regarding the demography in Hungary. The rest of the countries, all of the countries from Balkans, if you look on a presentation, for example, from data on the internet, we have negative growth, all of the countries from Balkans. So this means a problem, and I will say something regarding Romania. It means a problem in the next future regarding the students of our universities. Regarding Romania, from 2015 till 2030, the population for students between 19 and 23 years old will decrease with 12% in Romania, but for this region, for Banat region, for these six, not just Banat, six countries, our basin of attraction for our city, for our universities, it's about 20%. This is just by the data regarding the natality and the population existent now in Romania at, I don't know, 10 years old or something like this, around. So this means a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of problems, could be a lot of problem in the future, and maybe because to merge universities, it's a little difficult, because it needs politics and involve on the political factor, but maybe alliances and European universities, in my opinion, could be a solution for going forward, of course, at the same level. Please, next. Okay, it's okay next, because UDRES, I will present a short UDRES. Here at West University, you have UNITA. UDRES is an alliance of now 8 universities from Europe, one from Romania, and there are just 6 because 2 was added last week in Brussels. One is Politehnica Timișoara from Timișoara. You could see from Hungary a university, one from Latvia, Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, Austria, and you see Portugal with a good cover all of the region of Europe. Next, please. In short, just a short presentation of the what UDRES means for us. We want to prepare teacher to be entrepreneur, innovator, and educator. It's very difficult to have this all in a person, but this is one of the purpose of the project. Next, please. You could see UDRES vision. I will underline just the first line. Was better to see there, but we discuss regarding smart and sustainable regions. This is maybe very important because this kind of project could apply very well in our countries from Balkans, in my opinion. A lot of intentions and a lot of notions from the project. Engaged university, entrepreneurial university, European university. Here you could see an analyze, a map of future university, how we see in UDRES future university, with a lot of markups, like, I don't know, digital, like research, like innovation, like sustainable regions, so on. And here is image regarding what we have in Polytechnic University on the two axes. One is on research and another one on digital. With red is our zones in which we want to grow in the next period with these projects, of course. So finally, I will tell you about iLiving Lab. Here in West University, they have the same concept and the same vision regarding how we could evolve in education. Living Lab, in fact, are projects in which teams formed by students and teachers together from different countries, from different universities, solve different kind of problems, and raise, you could see, for me it's a little difficult, you could see on the last problem raised by a company, by a foundation, applied problem in these universities. In this project, there are applied sciences, so our solutions are normal to be applied. Okay, and I have some examples for what kind of living labs on the next slide. What kind of living labs we have? There are regarding the how we use artificial intelligence, you could see, and on the next slide you could see our living labs for this year. It's very difficult to see them, but you could see our list of living labs for this year, topics for 2022. Okay, and finally, there are another two living labs with example of how we cooperate in this kind of project. And finally, I want to say just maybe we have a lot of projects, research projects in Balkans between some universities. Of course, Romania here, this part Timișoara, more with Serbia and more with Hungary. But maybe we could think to have projects not just on research, we could have maybe, in my opinion, educational projects. And in this, we need the help of the states, not just of our universities. So this is a kind of what we could, how we could evolve to the universities who has this kind of European universities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Dragan, for reminding us the importance of networking in the academia. It is crucial that we stay close together. It is crucial that we connect. And I think it is very, very important that we not only connect between ourselves within the European Union, but we also connect through all the means that are available with the universities in the Western Balkans and also the neighboring countries of the European Union. We have all these splendid, very, very efficient financing schemes that are available, and I strongly believe in strengthening networks between universities and spreading the word, spreading values, spreading knowledge throughout the Western Balkans. We have some changes in the program here. I was just told that Professor Esposito cannot stay any longer with us. He was due to enter another meeting. So I'll move straight to our next speaker, again online, Professor Romiță Iucu. He's a professor from Bucharest University, the president of the Board of Trustees of Bucharest University, and a professor of higher education at the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences, with a vast experience, international experience in cooperation in the field of education, a crucial personality and academic personality that has done a lot of work, very well known in Romania and abroad, in promoting new methodologies in higher education, promoting new approaches in higher education. in higher education. I think a crucial step in on our agenda to see higher education producing stronger and better, continuously better graduates. Professor Yuku, I suspect you are online. Are you with us? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share the screen. It's the easy way for delivering a presentation. Thank you very much. The topic of the presentation will be more or less similar with Mr. Rector Dragan's presentation, the case of the European University Alliances in the context of resilience and, of course, building resilience based on the process which has been developed from 5 years, and its challenge present in this moment at the European level on the top agenda. And it's very important to start with the idea of creating and launching a real process of developing internationalization, cooperation, and of course European values in tackling foreign specific domains. From the European universities, challenges selected from this area are in relations with resilience, attractiveness, competitiveness, relevance, and authenticity. We like very much to stress the idea of having authenticity in the front of our values, geostrategic and soft diplomacy orientation, which is linked with the topic of the event, transnational development, and social values and identity and the diversity as well. From this context, in terms of attractiveness, it's important to see that currently Europe attracts 45% of all international students worldwide. That's an important topic for discussion, and of course 1.3 million foreign students already are in this moment present in EU 27 institutions, 25% from Asia and 15% from Africa. And of course, similarly, EU is an important destination for neighboring countries, and example is Ukraine, which is the third largest country of origin for students studying in EU after Chinese students. In particularly, in order to consolidate ambitions and the strategy to become more or less the idea of having a specific context of stimulating Balkans and neighbor countries in this process, European Union has enlarged the idea of creating and stimulating participation for the European alliances in these countries. And it's important, as Mr. Rector Dragan previously presenting, to see that many universities are already in this context. I would like to share with you an important emblematic case of attractiveness in this context. China's Belt Road Initiative was strategical proposal for promote China's higher education and its broader economic and diplomatic interest. And that's a very important idea to move forward and to attract a growing number of students from the international perspective. And all the figures presented are selected, of course, in the moment of crisis, but are generated by the period which was before Corona crisis as well. Europe has reacted, and that's very important from the perspective of resilience. And Europe is reacting with EU Global Gateway and an important proposal for demonstrate EU soft power and attractiveness in terms of research and innovation. And European identity as an important intermediary values for promoting was set up from the Commission in December 2021 and has been proposed as an agenda in parallel with the European universities. From the geostrategic and diplomatic orientation, it's also an important topic for all European universities in order to redefine the global role, to create an intensified competition on higher education market and attract talents, and of course being more visible in these competitions. And why not this science diplomacy, which is linked with soft diplomacy agenda in the Balkans academic area, become more important. And of course from the stakeholders level, which are linked to the Commission and the European main policy, to what's happening in the real sense at the rates. From the main dimension of resilience in European education, selected from the European Alliance's perspective, I have identified a list of, presented here in some windows, but starting from promoting European democratic values until the new European identity models, all European alliances have probably the main important function of ambassador for these alliances. What I did here is to select one case, and I'm not going to present, just to list for this mention. My presentation will be available at the end. The name of European alliances and the main topic demonstrated, illustrated here are very important. Driving European global role and leadership. It's Utopia, and a good example. New instrument for soft diplomacy and internationalization processes. It's CIFIS Alliance. Development of skills and competencies for the digital transition, Eurotech EU. Development of skills and competencies to the green transition. Green transition, Charm EU has presented here. And of course, Circle EU, promoting European democratic values, are giving a concrete example. Development of skills and competencies for the green transition, unique as well. And of course, EU Connexus is giving an example and showcase the quality and relevance for European higher education. And UFE Alliance, it's launched a deeper transnational cooperation among European universities as a part of the reality as well. And UNITA, because we are here in the middle of West University of Timișoara, the Alliance, Universitas Montium, promotes the European level sustainable Europe, emphasizes on the SDGs in connection with the UNESCO topic. And here it's an illustrated way for creating the bridges between UNESCO, OECD, Eurostat, a joint integrated data analysis and monitoring system for that. My last point will be related to an action for all European universities, an action which are demonstrating the response resilience in times of crisis. All 41 alliances of European universities greater reacted on the Ukraine's main crisis by developing an important message, build a shared vision of welcoming and peaceful Europe. That's so important to restore peace and to respect the human rights in Ukraine as well. And for this perspective, universities are responding very, very quickly. And more than 300 Europeans, which are comprehensively 401 alliances, are eager to promote one mission, safeguarding academic freedom and academic values in Europe. And in this context, the resilience are in action now. The last slides are related to the money and the funds we need for that. European University Association, it's militating for an allocation, real one, for resilience and supporting the development for this context of resilience. Last slides on conclusions. Resilience, it's an uncomfortable truth to be told for the European universities, and we are aware that internationalization, transnational cooperation, and shared values are so important for going on further in this area. And of course, universities are in this moment on preparing sometimes shared values and shared initiatives for brain bounty hunters, fundamental academic and European values with to become second in importance. And European remains key actors for the European way of life, It's the main important objectives, which are promoting democratic values and academic freedoms, and of course, creating a huge Europe's global influence from this area. The last slide, it's more or less for reflections. Of course, sometimes there is more strength than appears to be when we're talking about resilience, and the strong academic mission is so important as well, and as it is communities and academic freedom is respecting and sometimes accepting that in truth bears more strength than in force. I'm very happy that I could share with you. Thank you very much for your great attention. And I'm more or less in this moment aware that the contribution of the European alliances in this segment of resilience it's a true and a better condition or a precondition for a real way of life in the European context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Iucu, for an excellent presentation and a great reminder of the importance of soft power and the importance of the role the universities play in Europe play in promoting what is, according to many interpreters and many commentators, yet still the strongest feature of the European Union, namely its soft power, its capacity to attract, its capacity to be something desirable, and education plays a huge part in this. And thank you for drawing our attention to the competition that is at stake at the moment with other regions, with China, for instance. And I think it is a very, very important reminder that we need to be aware of the competition in which we are. We need never be complacent on the traditions of, for instance, the educational systems of Europe as being the only attractive forces of the intelligence and the minds of the people around the world. We are in a competition on this level as well, and very often we play in a competition with quite unfair players, and I think this should be also strongly emphasized. We are aware of some ways in which, for instance, China, through its very strong policy of promoting their culture, sometimes end up in promoting things that are completely against the values of our own societies, and we are aware of many centers, for instance, in the Western world, in American universities particularly, that have been closed, many centers of Chinese studies that have been closed because of that kind of limitations they put on the freedoms of the students. So we need to be aware, we need to strengthen our force in academia. We need to continue to link together. Thank you for bringing again up the idea of networking universities in Europe, and I think it's crucial for us educators to understand the importance we have in the whole architecture of the building of the resilience of the Western world. We are at the forefront of the attractiveness of this world, and we need to play our game properly. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker now. And what would life be without poetry and without literature? What would power be without the extremely beautiful power of the words and of the poetry and literature? I'm very honored and pleased to introduce Associate Professor Sanja Knežević. She's head of the Department of Croatian Studies at the University of Zadar, and her research moves around questions of Croatian literature and poetry, and I think it is a great pleasure to have you with us. The floor is yours.
Dear participants of this reputable Congress, dear hosts, ladies and gentlemen, I'm particularly honored today to represent the University of Zadar and its rector, Professor Dijana Vican, among you, the distinguished of the most distinguished. The University of Zadar holds the tradition of the oldest Croatian university and generally the oldest university in this part of Europe. The modern University of Zadar, the only of the department type in Croatia, grew up of the foundations of the University of the Dominican Order from 1396. So we are so proud on that fact. Really large tradition from the Mediterranean and European education. In the context of thinking about the topic of stability and security in Europe and the world, and thus in the Balkan region as well, we are undoubtedly living in one of the most challenging and extremely difficult times. First, the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the Russian invasion of Ukraine completely changed the view of the world, including the view of science and education as we knew it. Existential fear of the world and existential fear has crept into all pores of human life and activity. This fear is even more pronounced in regions that have experienced horrors of the war and post-war social deviations in the recent past. We also have that experience. I believe that we are all aware that if the war in Ukraine stopped at this very moment, right now, that so much damage has already been done that Europe, and Ukraine in particular, would be recovering for years. Peace is therefore the only guarantee of our stability, economic, health, and educational, and the most important, one being civilizational. The questions arises as to whether the world would better cope with the crisis if the global capital market did not completely marginalize the humanities and humanistics in general. On the other hand, a question arises: is the crisis eye-opening, and does it bring us back to the realization that humanism is still at the foundations of civilization? Although these are rhetorical questions, as a response, I will paraphrase the eminent Croatian scientist, astronomer, Korado Korlević, head of the well-known Višnjan Observatory and holder of an honorary doctorate at the University of Zadar. At a recent lecture at the University of Zadar titled "Working with Gifted Children, a Gift to the Homeland and the World," talking about the challenges of education, especially of working with gifted students, he stressed that we should change the current educational paradigm. He points out another letter should be added to STEM. It's A for arts. This would mean emphasizing creativity as an expression of the humanistic view of the world and the extremely important segment of all other sciences. Therefore, one should strive for the idea of humanity and humanism instead of technocracy and exclusive capital. Furthermore, the future of quality education is in smaller centers of excellences. This pursues an individualized approach to the pupil and student with a clear tendency of education for the future. The fact is, however, that education, especially higher education, has become global with the introduction of the Bologna process. This fact is by no means in conflict with the individual approach to education and does not have to be. The benefits of Erasmus projects, alone for the scientific and educational communities, were completely unthinkable just over 2 decades ago. Therefore, we need to continue to insist on international mobilities, make it even more accessible, but also nurture to individualization of educations on all levels. Getting to know each other's cultures, languages, and even educational traditions, such as Erasmus projects or the idea of European University Network, such as our EU Connexus Alliance, which is the University of the other member, can guarantee strong stability in building inter-ethnic and intercultural relations throughout Europe. This is particularly important in seismic areas of some European regions. For the Western Balkans area, which in the broader context of European and world history has often been called a powder keg, a metaphor for instability, today we see that a humanistic approach to education with a strong development perspective is extremely important. There, where the humanities are at the core, and not just capital, no place exists for corruption and crime. Where human potential is recognized and valued, especially the potential of young people and their creativity, the area is an example of economic progress. It is important to know and recognize the identity of other peoples, as each regional area is made up of many differences, which we don't have to and must not erase. The realization of a single goal is the only thing that must and should be the same. To conclude this reflection on the role of education in matters of stability and security within one European region, we will recall the mission and words of the man who was, in my personal opinion, the greatest man of the 20th century. Today, Pope John Paul II, a witness to the greatest horrors of a Western civilization, the barrier of the idea of humanity, in 1986, in the Italian town of Assisi, the birthplace of the great saint and little brother Francis, gathered representatives of all world religions in prayer for peace. His tendency was not to bridge differences between religions or peoples. His tendency was to raise awareness of the common idea of all peoples and religions, and that is peace. Faith in peace and the deep idea of humanity made this man, who is today in the Catholic world of saints, greater than all the criminals of 20th century. Today, while the Ukrainian people are suffering, while Ukrainian universities and schools are closed, I believe that as promoters of the idea of humanism, we should remember the words of the poet Pope and pilgrim Pope, which he prophetically uttered in Ukraine in the Greek Catholic Church of St. Nicolaus in Kiev. Quote, "Do not be afraid to risk with peace, to teach peace. The pursuit of peace will not be disappointed forever. Working for peace, inspired by charity that never passes, will bear fruit. Peace will be the last word of history." With this message, I sincerely wish for each of us to return to our workplaces, to our university communities, and courageously work for peace. Peace is the only stability, and education with the aim of raising awareness of humanistic values is the foundation of achieving peace and harmony among communities, peoples, and regions. With good wishes for the further work of this conference and congratulations of the perseverance in achieving excellence to the West University in Timișoara, which is an excellent example of creating stability in this part of Romania and Europe. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I don't like the little prince of Saint-Exupéry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Knežević. Even if you didn't resort to any poem, we could feel the poetry in your speech. It was obvious. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of peace and charity, which I think it's so clearly what keeps us together, what holds the world together. And we've seen in the Ukraine war, we've seen this so clearly that actually, despite any kind of utilitarian ethics, despite of any kind of whatever you want to call the ethics of the Ukrainian people, what was at very stake is their belief in values, their strong belief in values. They are converted to values, to democracy, to the democratic world. When President Zelensky was offered to leave the place, he said, I don't need a taxi ride, I don't need an Uber, I need guns. And life will conquer death. Light will conquer darkness. And that was in front of, completely illogical, in front of a second army in the world. But they said, we are here to fight for it. And then obviously the famous worship in the Black Sea and the famous go ... yourself. We are here to defend and believe in values. A strong why has kept, and it keeps the Ukrainians going, and they can go through anyhow. And I think that's crucial, the importance of values. Sometimes we forgot about it. We think that it's just the army. Yes, the army is important, but unless you have a very powerful system of values, you cannot survive, you cannot make it. That really raises serious questions to all of us in the universities. Are we promoters of strong values? Do we really believe in the values that we promote? Do we really believe that democracy, human rights, the right to freedom, the right to self-determination are fundamental? I'm not going to ask if we are going to die for it, but the Ukrainians are doing it. So thank you very much for this excellent adagio to the presentations today. I think we have, I know the organizers are not here, we have 5 minutes, let's say, for questions. If there are any questions in the room, I have a few that are already being raised from the public, but I would like to give the floor to give the mic to the floor first. I know it's late and we are under time pressure somehow, and I'll start with the question that was already given. I see a good number of military here in the room, and one question was raised to the importance of military-civilian cooperation, and the question sounds like this: resilience has been the word used again and again here and lately, and the key word, the ability to recover from shocks should also be ingrained in our societies. And obviously, what better ways to do that than through educational systems? But more specifically, do you, the panelists, distinguished panelists, see the importance of some type of military-civilian cooperation? Academics from the civil part of the academia, not the military academics, because they are doing their stuff as a military academia. We are the civilian academia, and all of us here are part of the civilian academia. Do we see any type of military-civilian cooperation being at the basis of this? Can we imagine, do we have experience of some of these exercises to bring together? Except this one today, which is really what it is, exactly that, a mix of military and civilians. But other than this, can you think of some other who wants to pick up the mic? We have the online people, but also Professor Knežević, yes, please.
It's okay, thank you. Well, I haven't got some experience like that, but I think it will be possible, and it will be really matter for all of us to have something like that cooperations, because we must have the same values and the same goals, and all academics and military and the civilian must do on that same goal. And that's because if we forget some, I don't know how to say, something which is military history, we couldn't understand the world which is around us. and in the vice versa way also about civilian academics or art academics and similar. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Knežević. Other answers, please, Professor Dragan.
Yes, of course. For me, it's more easy because we offer, in fact, our graduates, because our engineers, a part of them goes to our military structures. We promote the jobs, and we have good connections with our military structures to promote their jobs, because, of course, for example, in IT, it's very difficult to attract them because they are very well and very good salaries in the field. But we have links, and we cooperate to have the very good minds and our brilliant graduates to offer them the possibility to go in these systems, because of course they are needed in our country and to be very strong. And for this they need to have very good graduates. So it's a normal cooperation. Of course, we could cooperate in the field of research. From the technical part of view, we could come with technical part. Now it's maybe a little difficult because I'm sure that in Army there are a lot of systems, I don't know, made in other countries, not especially in Romania. I don't know the situation exactly, but we could cooperate, for example, with building engineers if they have a project or something in mind. I don't know very well how now is the situation in our defense systems, but for the moment we cooperate to offer jobs to our graduates especially, and if there are some other kind of interest, we have special cooperation on the field of information security, because there is easier for us because we have a faculty of automation and computer science with 3,000 students.
Thank you very much, Professor Dragan. It looks like we are drawing to a close, so we don't want to get into your way for coffee. I would just like to say a few final remarks. I return to what Professor Pirtea said at the beginning. At the West University, we do promote a culture of building a culture of security studies. And for instance, as a good example of cooperation between academia and military and civil connection, we have managed to place our university inside the European Security and Defense College. We run courses that are certified by the ESDC, and we do, for instance, a course on diplomatic skills for CSDP missions, for missions that people preparing or already in the field of related to common security and defense policy. It is fully done by us at the University of Timișoara, obviously in full cooperation with Brussels and other countries. But it's an example. ESDC is available to all EU universities, so universities be aware of that and look into it. It's a possibility to engage directly with the civilian-military nexus. Yes, I hope the panel has convinced you that yes, there is power in the politics, there is power in the military. You've seen the first two panels, but I hope we have tried to, and we've managed to somehow convince you, at least make you be attracted by the power of the soft power of education, which is, I think, I modestly believe it's as strong as possible, as strong as all the others, as important as all the others. I don't think there is much difference anymore between the power of the army and the power of the minds of the people. So let's all work together and build together stronger and more resilient societies and put our effort into constructing a stronger Western world. Thank you very much all, and it's coffee time. 15 minutes, and then we'll return to the table.
Welcome to our last panel on mitigating risk and consequences of severe crisis, how to ensure a safer region through economic opportunities. At this question, we hope that our speaker will provide some meaningful answers. We will have an online presentation by Mihai Precup, which is Secretary of State, Ministry of Finance from Romania, followed by Mr. Laurențiu Pachiu, Vice Chairman, Energy Policy Group, Romania, Lieutenant General Florian Coldea, Professor at National Intelligence Academy and Visiting Professor at West University of Timișoara, and Titus Constantin Bălan, Cybersecurity Solution Manager and Head of R&D Transversal Programs at Ethos, Romania. At the end of the presentation, we will have some time for open discussion and some concluding remarks. We will invite now our first speaker, Mihai Precup, Secretary of State, Ministry of Finance from Romania, which should be online. Mihai, please.
Invitation. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, everything is okay.
So, thank you very much for the invitation. I apologize for not being able to be there. It would have been a great pleasure for me because originally I'm from Arad country and I'm also an alumni of West University of Timișoara. But my current duties oblige me to stay in Bucharest. I will speak a little bit about, let's say, economic challenges for Romania during these times. We are, as you are very well aware, we are facing multiple crises. Despite that, the fact that Romania is benefiting of, let's say, macroeconomic stability, so from the nominal point of view, we are very much in line with most of the European countries. We are still lagging behind in terms of real convergence towards the European average. And you can see the first slide where I show that despite if you can turn the slide, where I show that despite the multiple crises that we faced, the convergence towards the European average in terms of power purchase of money didn't stop in Romania. So we started at 39% in 2006 when we joined European Union. Today we are above 70%, which is actually 72%, which is a great achievement. In a very short term, the power purchase of money of Romanians increased a lot. There is still way to go to reach the European average, but still, I think having the opportunity to be part of OECD will validate our status as a developed country. There is still a lot to go, a lot of things to do in this perspective, and there are a lot of investments to do in order to reach the potential in terms of economic growth. Last year, we had an economic growth, one of the biggest in Europe, 5.9%. This year, we are aiming at 2.9%, which is good for what is happening now in Europe, I would say. And for the following years, will be probably above 4%, which is more or less in line with the, let's say, economic growth potential of Romania, in line with the economic capacity of Romania. This was also validated by the rating agencies in April last year. Standard & Poor's validated Romania as an investment grade country, and also IMF is validating the status of Romania. In Romania, this year we will have important budget. In my capacity as State Secretary, I have the responsibility. One of the responsibilities is the management of public investments. Another responsibility is managing the state-owned companies which are in relation to the Ministry of Finance. So I can tell you that this year we have a record budget, I would say, for investments, 88 billion lei. On the top of this, we have the National Resilience Plan, 29 billion, which will be implemented over the next years. However, we still have to do a lot of reforms in order to get access to these funds. Next slide. One of our challenges in Romania is the inflation. You know very well, all over Europe, we are facing inflation. This year, we believe we'll have above 10% inflation, 12% inflation in Romania. But it's something that it's happening all over Europe. We are facing, as you have already discussed, the gas prices, disruptions in terms of supply chain, and of course the war which is at our border and affecting a lot this process of inflation. We see also a lot of, if I can go to the next slide, a lot of opportunities. We see that despite the fact that we have the war, there is a huge demand of relocating companies. I wouldn't say huge, but there is a demand in relocating companies in Romania. And we are preparing at the Ministry of Finance, together with the Ministry of Economy, a scheme in supporting companies to relocate in Romania. On the top of this, we see a lot of demand in using Romanian infrastructure. So probably in the context also of inflation, we are probably now aware more than ever that the investments are key in order to have a strong national economy. We see that most of the inflation is, let's say, imported through the gas prices or energy prices. And we have to invest, we see that we have to invest in local production capacities in order to be more independent on imports. If you can go to the next slide. Next one. So one of the challenges in terms of, I would say, economic security for Romania is the trade deficit complemented with the budget deficit. In terms of, this is very dangerous for a country. We have the budget deficits. Now we have an excessive budget deficit, but we have engaged in front of the IMF to reduce the deficit below 3% by 2024. On the top of this, we have this trade deficit, which can be only reduced by providing investments, as I previously mentioned, in local capacities, production capacities. And like this, people will also have opportunities to consume and to use local products. Next slide. Next slide. In terms, we have also another opportunity in Romania, despite the fact that indeed Romania is borrowing a lot during the last years due to the pandemics, now with this situation with the war at our border, we still have quite an important fiscal space that can be used for investments. And we still have this competitive advantage because the public debt only reached above 50% a couple of months ago. So there is still way to go until 60%, which is the Maastricht Treaty target. So we are much more below the other European countries, as you can see in this slide. If I can have the next slide. So what to do for the near future? One of my responsibilities here at the Ministry of Finance is to develop PPPs, private-public partnerships. I strongly believe that responsible government should always have a partner in the private, because you know our positions are temporary and the private is still there, and the private always has better capacity in order to implement some projects. It's not only about funding, but it's also about being able to implement long-term and strategic projects. We have identified here a couple of projects to be developed in terms of private partnership, public partnership, together with the public IFIs, international financial institutions. It's a huge advantage to work with an IFI. Myself, having a background in this perspective, I used to work for the European Investment Bank for many years, and I really believe that Romanian government should finance from the IFIs rather than from the public market. It's cheaper, it's long-term financing, it comes with technical assistance, and it goes directly to specific projects, which is a big, big advantage. I said that it's cheaper, much more cheaper than the financial markets. Another point, we have provided together with the Ministry of Energy, we have reviewed the dividend policy for some strategic companies. So we have decreased the dividends from 90% to 50% to some strategic projects, companies. So I will mention here Romgaz and Antibiotice, which will distribute this year 50% from the dividends generated, not 90 like it was the previous years. This provided these companies with additional funding of 900 million RON for investments, which is a game changer for these companies. However, during these times, this year, I can proudly report that we have generated 6 billion RON in terms of dividends from the state-owned companies, which is a record for the government. And most of this will be used in order these difficult times to finance the public deficit. Also in the context that we have, as I said, an ambitious investment plan of 88 billion RON. Another point is that despite this crisis, I would say from my perspective, the Romanian government is still benefiting of a lot of credibility. I will give you a concrete example. Is the Fidelis, the treasury bonds, which were issued by the Romanian state in April. We had the first tranche in April this year. The Romanian government managed to raise almost 2 billion RON in less than 15 days from the Romanian residents, which from my perspective shows a lot of confidence in the Romanian government despite the multiple crises that I have already mentioned. We have now launched a new issuing of treasury bonds, which I will invite you all to invest. I would say that the interest rate provided is quite good, above 7%, which is in a way covering the inflation. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I remain fully open to any question.
Thank you. Well, we will have a questions session at the end of the panel. Now we will move on to our next speaker, Mr. Laurențiu Pachiu, Vice Chairman, Energy Policy Group, Romania.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Special thanks to our hosts for the perfect organization and hospitality, and thank you, the auditorium, for having the patience to stay in this conference hall for the very last panel of today. We are witnessing, I would say, a major crisis like we never faced in the past 80 years. It is a combination of a supply chain crisis, a food crisis, an energy crisis, a geopolitical crisis. We have war in our neighborhood, and a political crisis, which is the fight between democracies and autocracies. I will try to refer briefly today to that layer of crisis in the energy sector. There are some people who say that the current energy crisis had only one benefit, and that is, it helped us overcome the COVID pandemic. How? Well, due to the high fuel prices, COVID couldn't travel around anymore. But let's look at the European landscape. Why do we have this energy crisis today? Well, we have the war in Ukraine. The Western response was sanctions, not to buy oil, crude oil first, and then partly natural gas anymore from Russia. And of course, the hardest hit came from the Russian Federation itself, who decided to cut supplies to certain countries like Finland, Bulgaria, Poland. I understand that they reduced supplies to Austria today. And 2 days ago, they reduced supplies through the pipeline Nord Stream 1 by 40%. So there is a huge demand of natural gas today, which puts a pressure on prices. This is why we have a natural gas crisis and, broadly speaking, an energy crisis. The embargo on natural gas imposed by the United States and the European Union will be implemented gradually. And you may ask yourselves why. Because, at least in Europe, there is a high dependency on Russian natural gas. I think you are all aware of this. So we are importing, in the year 2019, the European Union was importing 40% of its natural gas needs from Russia, 30% crude oil, 50% coal, and just if we look at the figures, the return that the Russian Federation is making out of these exports, they cashed in only in the month of March this year, 22 billion euros. If we look at the European Union plan, the response plan to this natural gas crisis, Repower EU, there is a clear decision of the European Union to reduce its dependency on Russian natural gas by 1/3 by the end of 2022. That is about 150 billion cubic meters out of a total of 450 billion cubic meters. So I guess if we look at these figures, it is clear that on the short and medium term, we still will be dependent on natural gas from Russia. What will be the effects of this natural gas crisis on the short term and medium and long term? Well, first of all, there is a higher race for diversifying sources of supply. Everybody is now looking for gas. Then, as I said, there is a huge pressure on natural gas pricing. What are the alternatives? Well, the first thought that crosses your mind is LNG, liquefied natural gas, which mainly comes from two countries, that is the United States and Qatar. The second option is to push intensively for renewable energy. This is not something that happens overnight, but definitely this energy crisis has increased the pace of moving towards a green economy. And of course, some countries are already implementing national programs for reduction of gas consumption. Look at Germany. Germany is particularly vulnerable to its natural gas consumption because it is highly dependent on the Russian Federation. And they decided, a big mistake, strategic mistake, they decided 11 years ago to step out of nuclear energy. So on the short term, there will be a high demand of LNG, which I said comes from Qatar and from shale gas from the United States of America. What about LNG terminals in Europe? Well, in the western part of the continent, there are quite a large number of gasification terminals, But the situation is quite different. It's in Central and Eastern Europe. We have terminals only in Poland, Lithuania, Croatia, and one hopefully in Greece, which will start operation hopefully next year. So even from this perspective of supply with LNG, I'm dare to say that Central and Eastern Europe is still very extremely vulnerable. I would like also to say a few words about how our country, Romania, understood to respond to the current energy crisis. Romania has quite a very good premise when it comes to its satisfying its energy demand. We have a very balanced energy mix consisting of coal, hydro, nuclear, renewable, close to 30%, and natural gas. Natural gas holds a share of 40% in our energy mix, out of which 25% are imports from the Russian Federation. So even in our country, which, as I said, has a pretty well-designed energy mix, do not expect that we are capable of waiving Russian gas imports in the near future. The public debate in Romania these days is very much intensive around the subject of the major gas discoveries in the Black Sea. Let's be prudently optimistic about that. This is not an immediate solution we should rely on. If the two license holders in the Black Sea, which are Romgaz and OMV Petrom, are deciding next year to commence the investment, then we might expect natural gas to flow only after 2026, right? But the environment has changed. That project, the natural gas project in the Black Sea, lies exactly on the frontier with the Russian Federation. It's not Ukraine anymore, it's the Russian Federation. Even yesterday, I understand, 4 days ago, another operator in the Black Sea, which is managed by American private equity fund Carlyle and EBRD, Black Sea Oil and Gas, that's their name, they announced that they started production at a small reservoir in the Black Sea. And 2 days ago, 2 Russian corvettes were patrolling around the platform. So the risks are high. And as I said, we cannot rely on an immediate satisfaction of natural gas demand out of the Black Sea. The risks related to the Black Sea are the risks concerning the gas development in the Black Sea, as I said, are related to the war in Ukraine, Russian boats patrolling, higher costs for the license holders. It costs more to develop a project in a conflict area. You have higher insurance risk. You do not have big players there anymore because we were wise enough to squeeze out Exxon, a major global operator, out of the project and replace it with a state-owned company, Romgaz. So today, the project in the Black Sea is controlled by 2 companies, which actually it's controlled by the Romanian government because Romgaz is controlled 100% by the government and OMV Petrom 26%. So we don't have a strong player anymore in that project. We don't have naval defense capabilities in the Black Sea to defend that project. So let's be mildly optimistic about that project. Another major debate that I noticed in the Romanian public arena is related to energy independence. I'm already tired in trying to explain at various venues and conferences that this concept is extremely outdated. This concept of energy independence was used for the first time by President Nixon in the 70s when there was the OPEC crisis. And it meant, indeed, that the United States wished not to rely anymore on crude oil coming from Arab countries. Instead of talking about independence, we should talk about energy security. Why? Because independence means that you provide your own energy resources, but it also depends at what price. If you find energy sources from other sources which are cheaper, why not use those? And moreover, I think it's outdated to talk about energy independence when you are still relying on gas imports from the Russian Federation on the short to medium term. So I think we should work a little bit on the concepts. Instead of energy independence, we should talk about energy security, which is completely different. And by this way, we would avoid other traps that we may fall into, like populistic policies in the energy sector. If we talk about independence, well, then you start subsidizing energy consumption. You start implementing populistic policies for the consumers, which on the short term may temper the effects of an energy crisis like this one. But I can tell you, I bet on the long term, fighting against market economy rules is not a wise thing to do. Particularly in a case like Romania, where the government, directly or indirectly, controls almost 80% of the production of energy. The Romanian government controls 100% of hydropower, 100% of nuclear power, close to 100% of coal power, and about 70% of natural gas. And this provides a temptation to start playing around in the economy. So we have to be very careful on the medium term how we are dealing with this government control, which may give satisfaction on the short term, but it will clearly distort the economy. It will clearly work against a competitive environment, and it will clearly affect investment climate. Private investors will not be willing to invest in an economy where they bounce against the government at each and every corner. We spoke about LNG. Yes, LNG might be a solution for Romania as well, but not in the classical way. We cannot build an LNG terminal on the Black Sea coast for the simple reason that Turkey does not allow LNG cargoes to ship through Bosphorus. So what would be the solution? Well, one solution would be to start getting supplies from existing terminals in Central Europe. And as I said, there is one terminal in Poland, there is one floating terminal in Lithuania, one in Croatia, and hopefully next year one in Greece. But still, the distances to ship gas from those terminals to Romania are quite high, which means higher costs. Let us also remember that everybody's looking for gas right now. So we should be lucky to get gas out of those terminals. Thirdly, there's no pipelines. Except for a pipeline that they are building for the last decade to connect Romania to Greece, there's nothing. And even if there would be pipelines that would allow us to get gas supplies from these LNG terminals, there is a big fight to reserve capacity on those pipelines. What would be the solution on the short and medium term for Romania when we talk about LNG? It's what we call small-scale LNG, which means you send containers, tanks by rail to Croatia, to Poland. You load them with gas in liquid form. The train comes down to Romania, where you have small gasification terminals, and you supply gas in transportation, in some industrial sectors, and why not, you use that gas to produce power, electricity, off-grid, which means you could supply a town like Timișoara with power from natural gas. So, of course, apart from natural gas supplies, a clear solution is to increase the rate of development of renewable energy in Romania. How to do that? Well, first of all, the government should not step in brutally when it comes to renewable energy, like it used to do in the past. We will have to turn off the light at home, lower the thermostat. We will have to think more about energy efficiency, how to put solar panels on our houses. So on the short term, these seem to be the solutions that we have to embrace. And to conclude, whenever there was a major global crisis, there was also a historical shift in the way we use energy. The First World War triggered the shift from coal to crude oil. The Second World War opened the era of nuclear power. This war, the Russian-Ukrainian war, some people call it the Third World War, has clearly opened the door for a more rapid shift to renewable energy. Let us not waste this opportunity. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck.
Thank you for your insights on current energy crisis. We will move on to our next speaker, General Florian Coldea, professor at National Intelligence Academy and visiting professor at West University of Timișoara.
Hello and good afternoon to everybody. I really want to be in line with the other speaker who expressed the thanks for all those who make this event possible. Very important that University of Timișoara, together with the New Strategy Center, still keep the subject on the public agenda. That's very important, first of all. And it's the sixth conference, and that shows how determined they are to keep that in the agenda, public agenda, which became very important problem. Second, I don't want to be an obstacle, definitely not now, between you and your weekend. For this reason, definitely I want to be short. Especially because all the things I want to approach in my presentation, you will see the slides, is or was already covered very well by good specialists. By the way, really good and in quality presentations which covers the problems with what the region is confronted in the present. We all, I think, left this conference well updated with the latest developments in the region of the Balkan area. And this is thanks to the quality of presentation of our speakers. The same and equally important was that not only the specialists of different institutions, but also private sector and also academic level and practitioners express their views in order to express and to present the situation in the Balkan area. Speaking about what I want to say, it's not necessarily the problems we are confronted with, which you will see, and please put some slides, and which already was covered, but I want to just underline two aspects. Next slides, please. To put some accent in my short presentation on the solutions. More or less, everybody agreed, please next slides, agreed that the solution is to speed up Euro-Atlantic integration and to enhance the resilience capacities. Basically, everybody agreed on this solution. My problem and my question is why we are in this situation now. Why we didn't speed up earlier the Euro-Atlantic integration in the region? Because we all knew about aggressive behavior of Russia. This was, I can tell you as a fact, well assessed in advance by intelligence services, by NATO, by European Union, by almost everybody. Separately than the evaluation and specialized evaluation of Russian behavior, we all assist in a very direct way how Russia interfered in the Georgia conflict. We all witness Russia's involvement in Crimea. What could be the answer? No decision. This is a normal logic answer. Did we know for the first time that the region of Balkan, it's a vulnerability for European architecture, Euro-Atlantic security architecture? No, this was well assessed in advance by intelligence services, by other specialists in the region. Why we are so late with this process? Very important questions. The simple answer is because political master didn't take decision at the right moment. Why? This might be another elaborated and requires an elaborated discussion. Probably they didn't believe, and nobody believed, that the behavior, the level of aggression, Russian aggression, it will be so high and that they will go so far. Probably they thought they can handle the situation in a much easier way. What we notice over the years is the political master doesn't want to take serious decision until the last second. Nobody wants to pay huge costs in advance until the things happens, unfortunately. In this respect, we should see what has to be done and what we learn from these lessons, from these painful lessons for the future. Another solution which was very well also mentioned here, it was about resilience. Everybody invoked resilience like it's a kind of panacea solution. No. Building resilience is not a panacea solution. Requires a huge effort to build. Even societies with a good level of democracy, all democracies are not able to build good capabilities. What about the region in the Balkan countries when they are facing right now crisis over crisis? They are facing now big problems they have to deal daily. How to build in time strategies when you have to deal daily in the field with problems. I really appreciate very much the contribution of our colleagues from Bosnia and Herzegovina and from Serbia. This is a good lesson for everybody, because they are coming with another reality. I often witnessed that in my previous capacity, when the reality from the street doesn't look like the reality from different offices around the world, Washington or Brussels or London or I don't know. For this reason, their presence here was very valuable and really important for the organizers, and to keep in mind to have always people from those countries we are talking about. Everybody speak about resilience again, not realizing that for the time being doesn't exist any recipe to build resilience. Is no universal recipe. Separately than principles you should take seriously into consideration, to build resilience at the societal level requires a lot of things, including cultural pattern. What about in countries in Balkan area where conspiracy theories replace the truth? We are part of the Balkan area, more or less. We know how well people think in stupid theories, in different ideas, rather than taking seriously into consideration the truth. Or we consider already being fully integrated. What about them? That you should be very realistic. For this reason, I put a disclaimer in my very first slide that I'm approaching subject from a practitioner point of view. I let the academics and other specialists from their side. I'm just try to be a humble practitioner which witnessed these kind of things over 20 years. To build resilience, it's good advice also for Europeans and for Euro-Atlantic communities to do so, to convince people to integrate sooner rather than later Balkan areas. Because this is one of the problems, that Euro-Atlantic community has to convince people and to not pay huge costs in terms of political cost for this kind of integration. Well, we should look much careful for what we advise them to do before not doing it what we have to do in this respect. It was much easier for me and for us as Romanians to think to this process of integration because we as a Romanian witnessed that situation which they are confronted now. In the early 90s, we didn't have any direction in which direction to go. Before, after we take a decision and we wish to go in the western direction, in west side, people were very skeptical to let us go in. Later on, we faced different problems for pre-integration process. It requires a lot of reforms, painful reforms. Just to see here the army, we have to remember that the army was reduced after 1989, after the revolution, from a number of 350,000 people to 70,000. This requires courage and painful reforms to make this. And this was in all fields, not only in the army. For this reason, we understand them well, how difficult it is for them to take serious measures in the right direction. Next slides, please, at the end of the presentation. Nobody announced, a little bit I tried to just summarize about Ukraine, cluster of crisis. Next slide, please. Nobody remember about COVID. It's still a problem and has a major impact for the area too. Next slide, please. Other factor of risk, just to summarize, 360-degree full spectrum of other factors. Next slide, please. I spoke already about the opportunities, integration and increasing resilience. One aspect in this slide is about mechanism of smart power. This is very important to know how to approach in a very smart way, adaptable to each state, to each situation, to adopt proper measures. This might be, from an intelligence point of view, very, very important, and it was proven to be successful in Romania, at least. Next slide, please. And next slide, please, because we already spoke about this. The main message I want to send to our partners, it is up to the Western Balkan partner, especially the young people from the region, to shape a better, peaceful and prosperous future, with constant help from their friends, allies and partners. I will end with this. Thank you very much. And sorry if it was too long.
Thank you for raising our awareness that we are living in a world of continuous conflict in both conventional and unconventional manner. And the real challenges for the Balkan countries in building up resilience at the country level. Now we will move on to our last speaker of the panel, Mr. Titus Constantin Bălan, Cybersecurity Solution Manager and Head of R&D Transversal Programs at Atos, Romania.
Thank you. Hello everybody, thank you for being here up to the last panel, and sometimes it's good to be the last because you have already heard what the others said and you can refer to what they said. My name is Titus Bălan. I am representing Atos Romania and the division Big Data and Security of Atos in Romania. As mentioned, I am a Cybersecurity Solution Manager in Atos. So I am representing an area of security that was so far not mentioned, but is very important, cybersecurity. And I like to highlight that both in 2014 and in 2022, the Russian attacks started with cybersecurity attacks, and then they were followed by military attacks. So this area is part of, let's say, the warfare that is very important. The panel theme is how to ensure a safer region through economic opportunities. And I am speaking from the perspective of IT industry, and there are three directions where Atos is actively contributing, and these are, let's say, the industry and defense institutions partnership, the so-called public-private partnership already mentioned, research and development, but with local resources, very important. And one of the third direction is that was previously discussed in the panel before, the research for defense, and in my area, this research for cyber defense. First, let me start with a brief introduction of Atos. I don't know if anybody knows about the Atos group and what Atos is doing in Romania. Please, next slide. So Atos is a global leader in digital IT. It is number one in Europe in cybersecurity, in high-performance computing, and in cloud services, and has more than 100,000 employees in 71 countries, with a revenue of about 11 billion. So this is, let's say, the big picture. However, the headquarters is in Europe, in France. We are an European society, as it is called. And I would like to show you in the next slide what we are actually doing in Romania. As you can see, we have a strong local presence. We are around more than 303,000 people in Romania. I would say for an IT company, this is quite important. And I would say that the division that I am representing, Big Data and Security, has more than 700 specialists, and more than 300 are part of the cybersecurity services. We cover different solutions, products and services in the area of digital security. Here we do work with our own solutions, but also we are integrators. And we also have a division of, let's say, a branch of high-performance computing, where Atos is building in Europe, is the #1 producer of European servers. Okay, going further, I would like to focus on the first pillar, the first direction where we are contributing. And of course, this is the partnership between industry and, let's say, state actors, defense institutions. Of course, we need to contribute with solutions. We need to contribute with innovative solutions that are our products. And here there are two areas that I would like to focus on: the mission-critical systems and the cybersecurity part. Next slide, please. In the mission-critical systems, there are different solutions already implemented throughout Europe of tactical deployable networks, 4G and 5G ready, let's say, networks. Battle management systems, emergency management, and you will see that one of our references in Romania is the 112 project, next generation 112 project, where we are working and implementing it right now. Electronic warfare with the concept of digital soldier. So different areas where our solutions are used in Europe and are, let's say, becoming very necessary considering the context. Next slide, please. In cybersecurity, we are worldwide #1 in managed security services. That is something recognized by Gartner. We are having our own products and solutions, but of course we act as integrator with many of third-party solutions. We have more than worldwide 6,000 security professionals, and what I would like to highlight is one reference that we are proud of, and that is that we are assuring the security for the Olympic Games since 25 years ago. And I would say the cybersecurity, not the security, and the IT services for the Olympic Games. And I don't know if you've heard of any, let's say, big cybersecurity incident that impacted this event that has a high visibility in the world, because there were not big events actually, and we are taking care of that. So this is one of the reference that we are proud of, and we will continue doing that also for the next Olympics in 2024 in Paris. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the Romanian entity, I would like to highlight some references that where we work. I've already mentioned the Next Generation 112 project, a project that is in implementation, and we are offering, let's say, the core software elements and solutions part of this new system. It's a state-of-the-art system in Europe. And of course, another thing that is worth mentioning is that since 2008, our entity, as Siemens at that point, were the first company in Romania to have a direct contract, not a subcontractor, but a direct contract with NATO, with NCIA. And we are since then suppliers of such solutions and services for them. Latest, 1 month ago, we have earned a contract for supplying cybersecurity refresh services for the NCIA. Other area where we work also in public sector is the European Space Agency, with focus mainly on electrical ground support equipment. Okay, so going further, or I would like to, let's say, summarize this industry collaboration with public sector. I would highly suggest that initiatives, and I'm sure that these are really becoming now reality, this partnership between institutions and industry is, especially in cybersecurity, where information sharing is very important, it will be strengthened. And as a model, I've mentioned there the NATO Industry Cyber Partnership that was launched in 2014. Another good model that was already promoted in NATO is the concept of cyber reserve, and maybe together with industry, together with academia, because we are in an event organized by a university, we can have such a cyber resilience, cyber reserve personnel from civilian parts that in case of emergency can intervene. Next, I would like to detail what we are doing in R&D for defense, and I would like to, next slide please. So important to mention is that from our Big Data and Security division, around 8% of our revenue is reinvested in research. We work in more than 150 European projects and more than 1,800 patents. Okay, next. This is the map of R&D in Atos Group, and we are proud to say that Romania is on the map. And maybe if before 15 years ago Romania was seen as outsourcing or delivery location, I have to say that the things have changed, and now we are gaining more and more competencies. For example, I give you the example of cloud security, where for the complete Atos Group here in Romania and here in Timișoara, we have a center of excellence for cloud security. So Romania delivering for the complete group and center of excellence for the group. Also there you will see that there are some solutions mentioned like managed detection and response and identity and access management, where we are doing actively R&D for some of our products and solutions in Romania. So the idea is to get involved in the region, but not only as delivery, as outsourcing. This has passed. Now we are actually involved in R&D, and this is how we enrich also the, let's say, the ecosystem in Romania. Next slide, please. Okay, so to conclude, these are the important steps of involving in R&D, and I have to say that we are involved in European Defence Fund activities. I will give you as example a project that we hope we will start representing Romania, the MDOC, Multi-Domain Operational Cloud, a cloud for cooperation between European countries in defense area. Also, some new initiatives, these are, I would say, 2-3 months old, are the NATO Diana and EDF HEDI. So two innovation, let's say, concepts that were started by NATO and EDF. Diana means Defense Innovation Accelerator for North Atlantic, and HEDI is Hub for EU Defense Innovation. And Romania is part of this, and we should also increase our intelligence, our R&D footprint in this area. Next, please. So last but not least, and this was treated already in the previous panel, we involve ourselves in education, in defense, I would say here in cyber defense. And next slide, please. There are some more initiatives that we are doing, partnering with important universities from Timișoara, Bucharest, Cluj, Reșița, and Craiova. I would say that the universities are mentioned there. Some very good practice that I'm also aware because I'm involved directly is the Cybersecurity Master Program from Transylvania University of Brașov, where Atos has contributed a lot with support, sponsorship, equipment, but also with involvement in the curricula and with let's say, experts as teachers. And this is also during in implementation in Timișoara. So the cybersecurity master program and topics are being developed together with Atos also here in Timișoara. Next, please. So some areas where we contribute already mentioned. What I can say additional is that Atos has an IT challenge, Atos IT challenge for students, and this one is worldwide since several years. Last year, out of more than 140 teams in 28 states, the team from Polytechnic of Bucharest has won the contest. I think let's say the topic was sustainability based on AI, and the team from Bucharest won. Okay, so going further, as a resume for the education part, I have to say that it's good to involve ourselves in education, but there is a big difference. Before we were involved, and generic, we were involved in educating people from awareness point of view. Now we skipped to expert training, so not only to know about, to take care about, to understand what is fake news. We go now to experts preparation, and this is the way that we should continue in order to develop internally, let's say, the next people that could help also in R&D and in strengthening our approach. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting how a private sector leader can contribute to increasing public security with mission solution system and through cybersecurity solutions, and also for your active involvement in partnership with the Romanian universities. We are moving on to our question session. We had a presentation of economic perspectives on current crises and also insights on government stabilization intervention. The second presentation highlighted the impact of current energy crisis, highlighting also the global dependence on Russian gas and the current situation of Romania in this crisis. The third speaker highlighted the fact that we live in a world of conflict, and for the Balkan countries is more than necessary to be smart about their approach or on their strategical approach on this matter. And also the last speaker highlighted the importance of cybersecurity and the public-private partnership in dealing with cyber threats, let's say. So we are open for questions from the public. We have here, okay.
Thank you very much. I don't have a question. I have only a short comment. Thank you for your good opinion on resilience and on security challenges in the Balkans. I would like to mention that I totally agree with General Korda about resilience. It's really expensive and it's very hard to build resilience. But this effort really matter. And I come here with an example from Ukraine. We studied a little bit what they've done until now, and it's remarkable, the result. They were able to continue to to work, to be resilient in what means to assure the continuity of government. Their parliament, their government, it's able to work in a very tough conditions, and this is due to the digitalization process, the progress that they made in the last 2 years in the digitalization process. Speaking about the military resilience, in 2014, when the Crimea has been annexed by Russia, they were unable to react and to do anything because they were unable to communicate between the military units, for example. Now, an engineer from SpaceX told us in Warsaw during the NATO summit on resilience that Ukraine has the most advanced communication systems due to the Starlink system that has been provided by Elon Musk company. And also there are many other aspects that could be covered, because Ukraine will be a good example for us to study, for lessons learned, and to continue to implement and to build resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Now, please.
Good afternoon. It was a very interesting introduction of the way we should compare the energetic security with the independent security. I totally agree that there is more to do in this area, and I particularly like the way how you advocate, sir, about the free market. However, when we speak about natural gas and resources, which should be exploited in the Black Sea area, we are speaking about a very, some kind of area where the security challenges are high. Free market imply private interest. Security is a public good. What is the role of the private corporate, the main actors interested in exploiting this kind of resources, in increasing the security in the Black Sea area?
Well, thank you for your question. So, did I get it right? Your question is that how can you balance a national security interest related to energy with what a private operator is doing with natural gas. Am I right?
Yeah, you are right, because we are thinking about public good, which is secured by the state. My money is the other guy's money, and we speak something about private interest.
Well, I have a very good example, which is the United States. I don't see any government-controlled company in the United States in the energy sector, and still their energy security is 100% bulletproof. What I actually meant was that the Romanian state has once and for all to learn its lessons, that it is much more convenient to influence the market, acting just like a regulator. You don't have to be the owner of the economy. You have to be a wise regulator. If you look in history, whenever governments invaded the economy as proprietors, as owners, they were bad managers. I mean, if you look today, as I said, the government controls almost 80% of energy production in Romania. And still, they're issuing regulations, which, I'm a lawyer, believe me, they're very strange. They just passed legislation, or they're about to pass legislation regulating speculative prices. Unjustified prices. Can someone here tell me what an unjustified price means? They're putting price caps on the sale of energy with the promise, price cap on the suppliers, with the promise that the difference, what is above the cap, will be reimbursed to the suppliers by the government. Well, we're about to pay back to the suppliers 1 billion euro. It's coming soon. The invoice is coming soon. Where do they pay that money from? So again, what I wish to emphasize is we have to learn that it's much better to let the market work according to the law, be a wise regulator, and you have sufficient instruments to design the market according to your national interest. But stop being an owner. You government, stop being an owner of assets. Again,
May I have an intervention
the
on
best
this?
example is the United States. Did I answer your question properly? Thank you.
Mihai, please.
Intervention on this? Yes. So there are 2 points which were mentioned. First, in relation to this cap on the prices, first of all, this is a temporary measure. It happened also in other European countries. It's a temporary measure and it will be reimbursed from the budget of the Ministry of Energy, and part of it depends. What is business? It's from the Ministry of Energy, and what is usual consumer will be from the Ministry of Family, Labor, Ministry of Labor. So it's only a temporary measure which will be reviewed in 6 months. We all, for all of us, was this crisis, geopolitical crisis, was a huge surprise. So we had to take exceptional measures in order to face this in a very short term. We have, for my a second point, this is a different way of seeing economy. My colleague Laurențiu Pachiu from this panel, probably he's very much liberal. I'm more like from the left side, and I really believe that a strong country and a strong economy, it's with strong companies. You cannot have a strong state with without strong companies. Having the Romanian state as a major player in energy field, I really see a big advantage for Romania in this, and a big advantage, competitive advantage, to be a big player also for Southeast Europe, for Balkans. Having big companies like Hidroelectrica listed in the near future will put Romania on the map, on the European map. We'll probably have, with Hidroelectrica listed, the third biggest energy producer in Europe, and probably the biggest company in Romania in terms of market capitalization. Having the state, having the biggest company in terms of market capitalization in Romania and the third producer in Europe, I don't see this as a problem. I see this as a big advantage, competitive advantage for the Romanian state. For my perspective, and I will close my remark, from my perspective, the main challenge in terms of security for Romania is not terrorist security, is not energy security, it's investments. Providing investments in the real economy, developing own state companies, and providing investments in own production capacities. This is the main point. I am someone who's coming from the private sector. I just joined a couple of months ago the government, and I can tell you that what I can find in the Ministry of Finance, I can find very good experts in fiscal, in budgetary execution, but less in investments. We should build capacities around ministries, people who are able to bring investments and implement investments. The only thing why I will agree to have a private partnership, public-private partnership with the companies, is to bring capacity in terms of implementation of investments. We need this. We need this in digital sector as well as in energy sector. because it's, in a very short term, it's very difficult to build capacity in the government in terms of implementation, and the private already has this capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, please. There.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Janos Eriksson. I have a question. It's not a question normally, it's a statement about what Mr. Prekop mentioned. I think the regenerable energy is the future, and we see Romania doesn't make so much improvement about it, and that's why it's important for the private to be more involved in this process, because some of the politicians can be influenced by the lobby internal, and they can stop the process and stuff like this. So I think the private market should be more involved in this renewable energy in Romania to create quick steps in this direction. And it's more like a statement or a question. Thank you.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes.
It's more like a statement.
Oh, it's a
comment. It was not really a question. I totally agree with Mr. from the energy about this renewable energy I think is the short way of becoming efficiency and to more getting strength in this direction. And the private should be more involved, as I mentioned, and because the more politics is involved in this, maybe, as I say, some politicians, they have different views, west, wherever, and can stop some process. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think this is the future for Romania especially. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question? Okay, I will have one question on my own. I'm interested to find out General Koldea perspective on the small debate that arose here between, let's say, a traditional approach on strategic national interest in owning some strategic resource providers like natural gas or other kinds of energy, and the other view, which our colleague here advocates for the free market in the energy sector.
Yes, in this respect, I'm very much inclined, based on my experience in some strategic sectors, with a kind of very cautious approach in which the state has to really play smart and play a role, because at the end we do make policies for people. We are not doing for the best of the private companies or for the best interest of I don't know what kind of actors, especially in the vital sectors. Including energy sector was well in advance, very well assessed. I remind you all, the decision about security, energy security, in the NATO summit in 2008 in Bucharest was taken very serious decision. NATO and other important decision makers really take seriously into consideration the dependency of in this sector, energy sector. The problem is, what was the decision? We come back. Why we are so late with the decision, staying dependent, not speeding up alternative solutions, or not taking in our Black Sea serious measures to extract more gas? Who stopped us to do that? Definitely state and authorities doesn't play well in this game. But is not unique solution, are different solutions who might work. In the United States, this solution works like our colleague and my friend mentioned here, but probably in other area, in this area, might mixed solution might works too. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question here.
Sorry, it was really a question for Titus Constantine, because with your background and knowledge, I'm interested what lessons you are taking from the cyber operations that are going on in Ukraine at the moment. The very good Microsoft report listing some, I think, 350, 400 destructive and disruptive cyber attacks made by Russia onto Ukraine, and yet Ukraine seems to be persevering through them. Any thoughts or comment?
Yes, actually, we are analyzing what's happening because, let's say, this is a very good lessons learned for us to see what is happening and how this is treated. We have worldwide 15 security operations centers and our own CSIRT team. And this is actually assessed, and we are preparing both from threat intelligence point of view to understand the types of attacks that are being performed. Most of the time, these are attacks that are, let's say, cutting resources and are sort of denial of service attacks. And this is something that we try to prevent and understand with third-party solutions.
Thank you. More questions? If not, I have to thank our speakers for their presentation and very insightful debate at the end of the panel, and also to thank our partners for this conference. Our institutional partner is the Timiș County Council, and our partners from business are Atos, Commercial Romanian Bank, Flex, and OMV Petrom. So thank you all, and have a very nice evening.